Was I expecting anything? I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I thought I was done with this. I thought no more reviews, no more requests, and but sometimes when you make something and you're done with it, you know that it's gonna come back someday, and you gotta continue with it. So if you're wondering, there's no music in this. There's literally not any music, but all I could say is that I actually thought I was done with this franchise. I thought I was done with anime madness. Video games counts. But I knew something inside me felt like it's not over. It's not over yet. So, if you're wondering what we're going to review today, before we do, let's do a recap. If you remember back in 2013, I actually reviewed this game, Project X Zone. Now you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with this review I'm about to do? Well, for example, is that this game has every IP that has been shown, and we'll get to this game later. But there's actually one franchise that very, very gets me interested. It's a game similar to Street Fighter, but it's more creative, and it's known as Darkstalkers. Even though I've actually heard about the Darkstalkers franchise thanks to this game, Project X Zone, as I mentioned, we'll be getting onto that game later in this video. I kind of want to explain you what it is. So, Darkstalkers has kind of a crazy story. So, supposedly, the original plan was to make a fighting game based on Universal Studios monsters. Now, I gotta say, if they actually did that, my mind would have been blown. Could you imagine if they did, I don't know, like Dracula versus the Creature of the Black Lagoon, or the Mummy versus the Thing, or how about Frankenstein versus the Wolfman? Ha, got you on that one. That's an actual film. But aside from that, so as I mentioned about Darkstalkers, there's many different stories. It's complicated, but one thing I will say is that Darkstalkers has pretty interesting. So, it's been really an interesting franchise. I've got to try the game out. Thanks to Project X Zone. Sure that people could say that, oh, they're also in Marvel vs. Capcom, but I didn't know who they were because, I was mostly, I was hyped up for Marvel characters. But Marvel vs. Capcom did show Darkstalkers. However, as of now, there hasn't been any new Darkstalkers, which I'm actually very surprised because I'm like, I tried the game out and it's great. See, and I want to say is, I'm happy I got the game, and yes, this is actually in good condition. It's an official PS1. Now I could be reviewing the arcade versions of Darkstalkers, but I'll be doing the console version, which is this one, Darkstalkers 3. But in reality, this is probably what the console is called. However, in the arcade, it's actually known as Vampire Savior. Darkstalkers has a lot of whole things. Hold on, let me see. There's like toys, a cartoon, anime, comics, manga, figurines, name whatever you want for Darkstalkers. Even fan arts have to count as well. But I will say it's very unique and very creative, unlike a game by the name of Mortal Kombat. But anywho, what am I even talking about Mortal Kombat? This is Darkstalkers we're talking about. Actually, now that I mentioned this, but supposedly I found out that Darkstalkers was actually the second best video game at the time they released the original game. Which, if you're wondering what was the first place, it was obviously Donkey Kong Country. I mean, hey, monkeys and bananas, you know. But I will say, Darkstalkers has been very creative. It's been very innovative on the ways how it is. But before we actually do review the game, I kind of wanted to do some highlighted moments. Things that probably gave me some surprising facts about Darkstalkers 3, and this is just me talking about some very interesting movesets for each I guess some characters.
Dmitry Maximov is, of course, being the vampire of the Darkstalkers series, has a very interesting moveset called Midnight Abyss. This is by far one of the most difficultiest movesets I had to deal with. Once you actually use this command, you actually turn, if it's a female, you turn them really more, how do I say it, more hot, like Felicia being referencing Marilyn Monroe. However, what surprises me is that if you use it to a male character, and I'm using Lord Raptor as an example, he turns them into a female just to, suck the blood because, they're vampires, And this actually really, really blows my mind.
Man, Dimitri is so crazy. He has a moveset where you can, if you're a female, the female character becomes super sexy. However, if it's a male, it turns into it gender transforms, turning them into females. That's kind of interesting. Maybe there is I'm pretty sure there's like a whole community of, I don't know, like video game characters turn into female characters. Thanks, Dimitri. Thanks a lot.
Now let's talk about Felicia and the fact that I put it against John Talbane. One move that really got me interested was called Please Help Me. However, you use the command with medium and hard kick. The Please Help Me will be jumped into midair like a surprise attack. I will say, I am surprised that Felicia is one of the characters that can hang in the walls like an average cat. Also, it's very funny to see how you can use Felicia to jump on your opponents and they're just looking. John Talbane looks like he's just thinking, but it's also helpful to attack your opponents. Anyways, as I was mentioned, this is just crazy. However, I will be showing you the Please Help Me original, which is just it's just the same thing, but instead of a surprise attack, it's just running.
Whew, I would never want to be near Felicia because she calls her pals, and that's a big pack of cats, because, they're cats. Yeah, you get my point, okay? Little Red Riding Hood had a granddaughter named Baby Hood. She went to go in the woods to go visit her grandma, Little Red Riding Hood, but the big bad wolf appeared, and what did BB Hood just do?
Rocket launcher, SMG, a bottle of flames, landmines in the air, landmines on the ground, grandma's basket, the huntsman, very powerful by the way. Did I also mention about 2 SMGs with a side of an apple? And finally, Grandma's Tears, because that is a very, very dangerous weapon. Also, she can rap.
Man, it's so cool to see John Talbane, a werewolf who knows martial arts. That is so cool. Very creative, Capcom. I will say that's a really cool design. Could you imagine if John Talbane would actually fight Mr. Han? Yeah, Mr. Han! And you might as well add as Dre Parker, Daniel LaRusso, Sam LaRusso, Miguel Diaz, Johnny Lawrence, John Kreese, Tori Nichols, and even Mr. Miyagi. Could that be an amazing movie? Well, maybe all of it except for Mr. Han and Dre Parker. Reason I would say that is because technically, even though the movie is titled Karate Kid, it takes place in China. So the bigger question is, wouldn't it be better if it was called the Kung Fu Kid? Because, China has, Kung Fu and all that.
And I gotta say, Victor's moves are really impressive. If you hold down and punch, he does like this really gigantic electrical punch. It's like you're watching punches. And then this happened. I don't know, but you have their opponents by Victor's butts. I am not joking about that.
I don't even know what could I say about Victor. I mean, he grabs his opponents by his butt. I got nothing. Man, Morgan's move Darkness Illusion is so cool. I will say, Darkstalkers is very creative when it comes to being very interesting. Hey, you know what that also means? It also means that it doesn't have to be realistic like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat.
Now here comes a move that Jeddah has called San Pasir. Now when he uses it to opponents, it looks like it inflates depending which body part. As for example, when he used it on Dimitri, his hands grow big. And it's just crazy to see like something like that. However, since this was a PS1, like it didn't let me allow you to show you all what it looked like. But thankfully, it was helpful for two other characters. Whenever Jeddah uses San Pasir on Morgan, it looks like her wings. I think it's on the head. It like grows and stretches, and it's just crazy. And for Sasquatch, his nose turns big. It's really funny the fact that... Wait a minute. Why am I getting some vibes? Yeah, this all feels so familiar.
Huh. Come to think of it, that move that Jeddah just did reminds me of something.
How do I describe this, without disrespecting a Disney fan? Well, you're welcome!
Maybe that's how Max got his nightmare of him becoming goofy when he had a nice dream of Roxanne. Maybe it wasn't because of him and American Werewolf in London. It was because he couldn't beat Jeddah, and he kept on using that move, and he used different characters, and thus created the famous nightmare from a Goofy movie. One of my favorite scenes, by the way.
Now here's Morgan. She has Darkness Illusion. Very powerful move, by the way, and it's a good thing that it's cool. But not just that, another move that is really interesting is called Finishing Shower. These two movesets are most people remember nowadays from Marvel vs. Capcom. But I also want to talk about Lilith's because hers is a really interesting one. I don't know what they were thinking, but apparently you can do a DDR-like style on Darkstalkers, and as you can see, if you don't follow at all, you get an X. And what I did is just button mashed the whole thing. However, I gave it one more chance to try it out, and I actually did perfected it, and in the end, it was very powerful.
Alright. Now it's time for me to actually talk Darkstalkers 3. Alright, so no more... I usually say no complain, none of that. But, this is like me returning for man, it's been 3 years. I just realized that. Wow, I haven't done a review since 3 years. During Nintendo's 90s Moments. What are the odds? But anyways, today I'll be talking about Darkstalkers 3, and I'll be playing the main character, which I will be explaining it in the review.
Since we're talking about Darkstalkers 3, I'll be playing as Morrigan. Now, keep in mind that she is the main character of Darkstalkers 3, so this is kind of like my way of playing, this game. And because we're playing it on the PlayStation 1, it has a really long loading screen. I don't know what is up with that with PlayStation 1 titles, but that is something. I think it was one thing I've actually had issues with the PlayStation. The game is similar to what Street Fighter is. It's a 2D fighting style. However, this game actually brings some very unique ideas. This is before games like Injustice, Mortal Kombat brought these ideas. So basically, since we're playing Darkstalkers 3, the whole idea is that you have two stocks. So, meaning you have two health bars, but once your opponent or you knock your opponent's bar, it brings out another one. So it's more of a stock. But I will say the game is very unique. One thing I do like about this game is that it's very creative. Rather than making a more realistic way to fight and beat your opponents, you make it so creative. It's like if it's a cartoon. I forgot to mention, but the opponent I'm facing is named Anakaris, and he was mostly inspired by the mummy. On the bottom of the screen, you see these special meters. Now, usually when it comes to special meters, they're usually only available to be used once. However, Darkstalkers 3 introduced it where the maximum capacity is actually 99. And yes, I am not joking about that. The next opponent I'm facing, his name is Victor, and what makes Victor very interesting is that, of course, he's based off of Frankenstein, but he has the ability to use electricity. Yeah, just I wonder who would win a fight between King Kong or Victor. Almost said Frankenstein, despite it is inspired by Frankenstein. So you probably heard that roar. Well, that roar means that you or the opponent loses the health bar, as I mentioned about stocks. And speaking about the games, I do like its background. Anakaris was a desert. This one reminds me a lot about the World War II. The next opponent I'm facing, his name is Rikuo, and he's of course based on the creature from the Black Lagoon. However, I do love his stage. I just, it's nature. Sometimes nature is beautiful, but at the same time, it's terrifying. Thanks a lot, Rikuo. And speaking about Rikuo, one thing that makes him fight is that he uses water. Yup, H2O. That's the real deal. If you look at the background, you could see one of the plants similar to a Venus flytrap. Actually, I think it's devouring an animal, but the animal is trying to escape. It's probably a lizard. The next opponent I'm facing, his name is Bishamon. Now, Bishamon is very interesting because it's a samurai, but it's cursed, as in a ghost. Like, once it grabs someone, it becomes Bishamon. And one thing that makes me very interested is that the way he fights, whenever he slices you with his katana, it automatically could show you if you're like cut. Then I saw that background, that blanket moving. At first I was like, what the heck is that? What is that? But eventually I lost, whether you win or lose. You see a doggy. I'm like, oh, it's just a doggy. Oh man. I thought it was something scary, but it's actually really adorable. Then the next stage is Bullet Train. However, you actually get to fight a random character. So I'm facing John Talbane. John Talbane is basically your average werewolf who knows Kung Fu. I love how the train is moving somewhere, like it's taking you to the next course, depending who wins, you or your opponents. However, I will say it is kind of interesting that the background actually makes it move. I kind of like those type of games where you're playing fighting games and in the background you're moving like you're heading to one destination to another. Also had to go on a brief point, but one thing I really like is that when you beat your opponents, the characters react. But I do love Morgan's victory animations that they did for this game. The next opponent you face is Jeddah. So to explain you what Jeddah is like, he's basically your average anime Grim Reaper. That reminds me a lot of the JoJo Bizarre Adventures characters. I will say I wasn't really expecting the stage. It's kind of creepy, but at the same time, it kind of makes you feel really panic. Like I'm talking about like you have to beat Jeddah really quick because Jeddah isn't just some boss that, he's like, "Oh, you got me." No, he takes it seriously. The first time I actually heard about this stage was actually in Project X Zone. I will say that is a really good game, and I do say I'm glad that's how I got into Darkstalkers. So Jetta's a little bit difficult, but if you can actually time it, you'll actually get used to it, and you can actually beat him. And one thing I do like about this game is that when you beat your opponent, depending who you play as, gives a quote. Now you expect that this would be the end of the game, but no, you have to fight one more opponent. Now this could be different characters. And since I'm playing as Morgan, I'm actually facing Lilith. Huh, what are the odds? And what better yet that to face Lilith, you fight her in the same stage you fight as Morgan if you pick another character. Yes, this is real, and this is really cool. You see, Lilith had an interesting story. She originally was an angel, but she was redesigned to be similar to Morgan. When you do, you feel really great, and it's good that it feels amazing. And I just want to say it ends off with a really cool cutscene. Now, I will say this is really interesting how it actually leads up to the potential of another Darkstalkers title. So the ending is revealed that Lilith, all she ever wanted was to have a body, because she is technically part of Morgan's soul. However, Morgan decides that she wants to make Lilith become one with her, basically making a fusion, but that it gives out that giving Lilith what she wanted for a really long time. And then it just ends like that. Morgan has finally got everything, but she still feels the same, and that's good. Since I've mentioned a lot about rivals in Darkstalkers, like how Morgan fights Lilith, I actually want to dive in another one. This one, if you play as John Talbane, you fight John Talbane, but he's not called John Talbane. His name is Dark Talbane. Supposedly, this is an evil version of John Talbane, which is really interesting. This is probably by far one of the most hardest rivals I've actually had to deal with, and it was very difficult because I do like how Dark Talbane glows. However, he is a really tough opponent. He will actually not hesitate. And yeah, and you know what's funny? A lot of people talk about how in order to be better in fighting games, you need to play against other players when you could probably just deal something like Dark Talbane. However, like I said, he's a really tough opponent. He can actually, sometimes he can mimic anything that you could do, but once you actually get used to it, it may take a few times, but it would be helpful, but it will be. All I could say is that it is very interesting that they made this. However, if you beat Dark Talbane, you actually get to see John Talbane's ending, which is very interesting. The ending is supposed to be like John Talbane has been looking for someone, and I believe that this might have been John Talbane's father. And he talks about how he has the answer that I can't return once I know the truth. Maybe he has been looking for something, and it's just interesting. I think this is why John Talbane is one of the most popular Darkstalkers characters. That I will say is one of the coolest ones. And yet he's still looking for this mysterious figure or person or Darkstalker. But it's very interesting. But it's not just that, is that meanwhile there's actually some kids sitting around a campfire, and just two of them, and they said that John Talbane had promised about teaching them about martial arts. This is really one of the greatest endings ever. And who knows, if we actually do see a future Darkstalkers, maybe John Talbane might be the star. I think Felicia's ending is by far one of the best endings that has been created. It's really cool because she actually makes an orphanage called Felicity House, a nod to her, everything. And she just wants to help those who can't help themselves. But one thing I do like is that even though, humans don't appreciate Darkstalkers, these kids actually appreciate Felicia, and maybe when they get older, they will always appreciate every single Darkstalker. And it's great because this is an ending probably would be like if Felicia quit her dreams becoming a star and she just, wanted to help and inspire kids to have, their own dream.
Technically, I'm supposed to end the review there just after playing the game, but I feel like I kind of want to talk more about Darkstalkers. Like, talk about, like, other, probably where the Darkstalkers has been throughout the history, other than, just being in Darkstalkers or Vampire, or, whichever name you prefer. Before we actually do talk about the other games, let's actually talk about something else. How about books? Now, I actually do own this book. It's the Darkstalkers Rise of the Night Warriors. I like how it's paying homage to the first game, which is the first arcade of Darkstalkers was titled Darkstalkers The Night Warriors. And what's interesting enough is that this is actually volume from issue 1 through 6 and Darkstalkers The Night Warriors issue 1 through 3. I'm actually reading it in the back because it's easier for me, and then that way I wouldn't forget. However, I do like its cover. I know I could talk about this whole thing, but you know what? Yeah, let's actually talk about it. I think it'd be great to just show you a little bit of how this one is.
I don't want to show you much on, because it feels like I'm going to spoil you everything, but the Darkstalkers comics are very impressive. The art style is really good. It makes me feel like it's a hybrid of Marvel and manga. However, this was developed by Udon Comics, which I'm very impressed. The way that all this it's great, and they do follow like the games, and it's amazing. This also has like a whole universe, have backstories of characters, and yeah, it's great.
Actually, there's actually another comic I actually do own, but I haven't opened it, and this is Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers. Yo, this is a cool crossover. Having the Street Fighter series, which I was mostly accustomed to, and having it to Darkstalkers, that is the coolest thing ever. And you know what? I could just open this and show you guys how it is. I think it's just pretty cool that they made something like this.
Once again, developed by Udon Comics, and it's awesome to see that the Street Fighter and the Darkstalkers are in the same universe. They also reused the same art style that was used for Darkstalkers, and I'm very impressed that not only they got to have like one franchise, but two franchises together. I still wish this was a video game, by the way. It's just great to see it, and maybe we'll see it in the future.
If you think that's cool enough, oh, I'm not done yet. Because let's talk about the manga. This is actually called Malefication, and it's a crossover with Darkstalkers, and not only just Darkstalkers, but Red Earth, another Capcom arcade series game, So it's kind of a cool crossover that they got two Capcom IPs.
This manga is very impressive. This was actually published by Senseiya and of course licensed by Udon Entertainment. I will say not only that this is just a manga about Darkstalkers, but it's a crossover with Red Earth, another Capcom franchise. It's really great to see how they start doing crossovers. Maybe that's the reason why in Capcom Fighting Collection, Morrigan and the line from Red Earth are in the center and big.
So the next game we'll be talking about is SNK versus Capcom the Millennium. Now, this is actually, I'm playing this on the Switch, even though it was released on the Neo Geo Pocket. Well, because I don't own a Neo Geo Pocket, thankfully they released it on the Switch, and yeah. Other than that, just enjoy me talking about and giving my thoughts about it.
I will say I am very impressed that they actually made an 8-bit like fighting game. Actually, now that I think about it, it reminds me a lot of the Mega Man Extreme games. Maybe X and Zero was considered to be in the game, but probably got scrapped and the designs of them would go on to create Mega Man Extreme 1 and 2. As far as I know, there's only 3 characters. It's Morrigan, Felicia, and BB Hood. Since this game is on the Neo Geo Pocket, as I mentioned, of Mega Man Extreme, it does remind me a lot about the Game Boy games. Actually, that would have been really cool if they released it for the Game Boy Color. I would have been playing that as a kid. They also have this mode where it's a dancing mode similar to DDR, or if you don't know what that is, it's called Dance Dance Revolution, but you play as Felicia. Sure, there are other characters, but I think it's pretty interesting that they had Felicia with different, reactions. One where she gets defeated or she couldn't dance, one where she did it but she felt like she didn't try her best, and one where she does a dance celebration.
Man, it's really cool to see that SNK versus Capcom was an actual thing. It's actually kind of interesting that they got SNK games like Fatal Fury and Samurai Showdown with, Capcom. And of course, we have to talk about, one game. Yep. I I do have to bring this out of the bag. I have to talk about it.
The Marvel vs. Capcom franchise is what very unique, but Marvel vs. Capcom 3 could actually show us what a future Darkstalkers title could be. As a kid, I always only got it because of Spider-Man and Mega Man, but as I got older, I really dived in more into the Capcom franchise and learned that they're really cool. Also, I love the 3D models that they made for each character for Darkstalkers, which is only Morrigan, Cienko, or Lele, and Felicia. I will say I really do wish that they did add more Darkstalkers characters. I think that would have been great. Could you imagine having John Talbane, Victor, Dimitri, even, I don't know, Lilith, or I'm trying to think who else, but I will say it's kind of, that's all I've always wanted for a Marvel vs. Capcom title, to have enough Darkstalkers characters that would equal for another, IP or like any of the Marvel section, one that would, equal it. But I do hope that the Darkstalkers will make a return, even if they have to be in Marvel vs. Capcom. I really love to see how they actually did Felicia's super move, Please Help Me, but in 3D. This is the coolest thing ever.
And the final game I'm actually going to talk about for mentioning about Darkstalkers is, of course, the one where I began, Project X Zone. Man, it's about to be 10 years. We're in 2022, so technically it's been, wow, 9 years. Actually, I think it'd be great to show you guys a little rehash of what I talked about during that time.
That I actually bought a game which was called the Project X Zone, which is called Project Cross Zone. I mean, people like to refer it as X, but I like to say it Cross. But basically this game, it's kind of like it's a Sega, Namco Bandai, and Capcom joining forces together.
But I never actually explained you all what Project X Zone is. It's a more strategic RPG. It's similar to games like Final Fantasy Tactics and Fire Emblem. And the greatest part about it is that the Darkstalkers are obviously here. Dimitri, Morrigan, Hisienko, Lord Raptor, heck, even Jeddah and QB. This isn't the first time they've ever done something like this. There existed another game called Namco X Capcom. Unfortunately, I do not own a Japanese PS2 since the game was only exclusive to Japan, unless I might be mistaken if anyone has any, evidence that there is a US release. And no, ROMs don't count. But I still cannot believe that the Darkstalkers got to meet not only other characters from the same company, Capcom, but with other companies, like as I mentioned in Namco X Capcom, the Darkstalkers got to meet up with characters from Namco such as Tekken, Valkyrie, Tails, any other franchise. But Project X Zone includes Sega. So, yes, I know you could all just think about Sonic, but there's more than that to Sega. There's Sakura Wars, Virtual Fighter, there's just so much that it just blows my mind to learn that not only I got to learn a lot about Capcom Namco, but also Sega as well. The game is very innovative and very inspiring. It's almost like if I want to make a game and take inspirations from Project X Zone. Overall, this is one of the best games that I've really enjoyed. It's a game that I mostly would recommend you to try it out and have a lot of fun. I just hope that, as long as this game is still out there for the fans, it'll still keep on going. It's surprising enough to see that this game actually really got a sequel and it's great. And we got more Darkstalkers. However, I did try to play the game, but it is confirmed that Felicia is in there, as well as BB Hood, Pyron, and probably more. But overall, it's great. Also, did I mention that this game also features Nintendo characters? That is awesome for being a Namco Bandai game.
It's also time to talk about the Darkstalkers cartoon and the Darkstalkers anime. And yes, I do own separate copies and the complete collection. Yep, I actually went there to get the complete collection. I know a lot of people told me to back away from the cartoon one, don't get the complete collection of the cartoon. I'm just very curious. Is it that bad? I mean, sometimes there are shows that are actually really good. Um, but yeah, let's just talk about it.
Now let's talk about the Darkstalkers DVD for the cartoon series. Now I will say the logo is very cool with its metallic like. However, the front cover wasn't what I was expecting. Also, I want to point out that this is a really really thick DVD case. I'm not joking about it. It's actually pretty impressive that they make cases. Usually whenever I buy DVDs with disc, they usually contain one. Opening it, we have a very familiar company. Yeah, a company that dubs a lot of anime. Maybe that's why Shinji from Evangelion was going through a lot of problems. But aside from that joke, I just I had to bring it up. But anyways, one thing I will say that is a downgrade is probably the disc. They're like a red ring with a black circle. I was hoping to see like characters or something very cool. But, anyways, the back part reminds me of the VHS era where sometimes VHS copies had to show pictures of, what's going on and or from the show or movie even though, this is a DVD. Though I do gotta say, the opening for this Darkstalkers cartoon is so cool.
They're back. From out of the gloom stalk your worst nightmares. Ghouls, zombies, werewolves, vampires. You can't be sure what lurks out there in the darkness of night. intergalactic collector of planets wants the Earth, and he's going to get it, even if he has to wake the undead. He summons Dimitri, Lord of the Vampires, to launch a reign of terror, to release a plague of monsters and bring humans to their knees. But other Night Warriors are on the prowl. Monstrous, awesome contenders with bizarre fighting powers. Immortal creatures locked in battle to decide the fate of the world. It's enough to make your blood run cold.
Though to be fair, this was actually made in the 90s, the story is mostly centered on Pyron wants to take over, and of course there's always going to be some characters that will be fighting against the main villain.
But now there are billions of them. Common, grubby little beings without any powers, any magic, any usable mutations.
Dimitri actually has a really good voice for having it being the American adaptation of the Darkstalkers series.
Are you the idiot that woke me in daylight?
In the Darkstalkers cartoon, Morgan has a Scottish voice. Actually, what really makes me very interested about it is that it almost sounds like Morgan's voice from Marvel's Capcom 3. Don't believe it? I'll actually show the similarities.
Where am I? And what year is this? Good's not bad, but bad is better.
A lot of people would say that the dub is usually cheesy, but at least this is better than what we could expect.
Morrigan is your second in command. Respect her. You will need each other. As long as she remembers that I am in charge. Ha! I am in charge.
Actually, the animation reminds me a lot of Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego and Archie's Weird Mysteries with, of course, monsters. Usually, whenever they make American adaptations of games, they usually censor things, but I'm actually surprised they never censored Felicia.
No! Where did she go? I had her! She disappeared.
So they usually always gonna have an original character. Now this is Harry Grimoire, which is the descendant of Elijah Grimoire, which Felicia was looking for to deal with the Darkstalkers, which works for Pyron.
Harry, what can I say to convince you?
I think you just did.
I will say I love how Victor is very funny in a very comedic way.
Great. How great?
Also, if we ever get another Darkstalkers game, can we have Elijah Grimoire, a wizard character for Darkstalkers?
You're a Grimoire, all right.
Now let's talk about the DVD cover for the Darkstalkers Anime Complete OVA collection. One thing I like about its art style, it's all anime, and it's great that they actually paid homage to the games that are out there. This is one of the coolest designs I've ever seen. But fun fact, that was just actually a cover. Now we actually get to show you what the DVD is like. So opening it, you get some promotional art cards. Here you have Morgan and Dimitri. Really cool, by the way. Love how it's all very themed. And then the other side is Hisienko, Donovan, and Anita. And then the next card is Hisienko, Morgan, Dimitri, John Talbane, and Felicia. And then if you flip it the other side, you have all the cast that's in the show. And then let's talk about the disc. The discs are so cool. It has Morgan, and I like how the way the logo is based off of the actual video games. You know, I usually keep this family friendly, but I'm going to be honest. This is one of the most badassest DVD collections I've ever seen. And I'm thankful that Darkstalkers did that for me. This is by far one of the greatest ways for how they're going to start the Darkstalkers anime.
The dark shall be with us always.
You know, this animation has been very familiar, and that's because there exists a Street Fighter anime, so they took a lot of inspiration from the Street Fighter anime to live up to create the Darkstalkers anime.
See who is the greatest of us all. If you will stake your life on the outcome, I shall consent, but be warned.
You can see
And
it
I will
now,
say
can't
again, the
you? Your true
opening
form.
is so cool,
Welcome
and
to the world
I just
of
can't
the
say anything
dark.
about it.
Accept from me, if you will, the kiss of death.
Actually, what made me feel very excited about this is the fact that this is a whole universe. It is something so great, man. And I will say, Morgan is really good.
Sounds like an intriguing man.
Apparently, in the Darkstalkers anime, it's revealed that before they were called Darkstalkers, they were called the Dark Ones.
You're one of the dark ones, aren't you? I can tell from the smell.
We don't say
Apparently, only Scott
The
McNeil got to
politically
reprise
correct
as Lord Raptor not only in the anime, but also the cartoon.
I don't smell a damn thing. Thank you, Australia! Huh? Oh, great.
I just think you should be careful. Something's gonna happen, I know.
Fun fact, the fighting scenes are mostly paying homage to Night Warriors, Darkstalkers Revenge, even though it's mostly the Darkstalkers franchise. And it's very incredible to see something like this, like how Morgan and Dimitri are fighting. And here we have one of my favorite characters, John Talbane. This is by far one of the best quotes John Talbane has ever done.
Hate the dark. Despise the dark. The body and soul of the Dark One is stained with filth. For that reason alone, we must live. If those such as we no longer exist,
I think by
how
far
else
John
can this world
Talbane and
know of
Felicia
their
are my
need
favorite
for us?
characters for the
What am I gonna
Darkstalkers anime.
do? I guess people aren't in the mood for musicals right now, especially during wartime. Aha! I may get my chance sooner than I thought.
It's actually really nice to see them working together, and they do make a great couple.
Well, what do you plan to do with it?
I haven't thought that far ahead, actually.
Could it have something to do with the ammo in the back, thinning the herd, so to speak?
Something like that.
Don't tell me it's a martyr.
And to end it off, it's really nice to see how Felicia tells John Talbane how the Darkstalkers and humans can live in one world.
As they say, any fight you can walk away from.
You saved me. Thank you.
Tell me, how does a Darkstalker come to care for human lives?
There are those willing to understand us. If you give them the chance, it's only a matter of time. You know, they're coming to understand us.
Is that so?
Mm-hmm. I know it's true. We live in the same world, don't we? We have no other choice but to get along.
I think so far Darkstalkers isn't just some game you just play. It's an inspiration. It's one of the best games that exists throughout video game history. It's kind of sad that Capcom hasn't made another title, but I would love to see a brand new one. I think it'd just be great to actually, talk about, or at least bring one more Darkstalkers to, nowadays. And who knows, if that actually does happen, if it succeeds, we might see more Darkstalkers titles. Yeah, so if you're all wondering why, it's because some people say, well, actually, you know what, I'm just going to say it honest. So, there was a bit of a disaster for Darkstalkers. Reason why, and I cannot believe this. I don't even want to believe in this either, but I found out it was the truth. Keiji Inafune. For those of you who don't know who Keiji Inafune is, he is known as the father of Mega Man, but he, at some point, he noticed how many players were really hooked up into, Halo, Call of Duty. So Inafune thought the idea of making Capcom games where it's try to be better, but not really. And it kind of bummed me out because we could have seen a Darkstalkers 4. Actually, speaking about Darkstalkers 4, there was an actual Comic-Con where they actually revealed a actual video footage where it was shown that the title said Darkstalkers are not dead. We were supposed to get Darkstalkers 4, but it became Darkstalkers Resurrection. And yes, it's a digital only in the US, but if you live in Japan, you can actually get an actual copy of the game, which I was very bummed out and disappointed because I wish you could have had all the Darkstalkers games. You only have Darkstalkers Revenge and Darkstalkers 3. But over time, we've been waiting so much, and eventually we ended up getting Capcom Fighting Collection. A game where it's all of Capcom's fighting games, but it's not Street Fighter. Well, okay, maybe there is one Street Fighter, and I don't even know why they had to add Hyper Street Fighter to that. One should have been in the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection. It's a whole thing, but other than that, I will say I would love to see Darkstalkers make a return. And I think it's great. I mean, it's just what I wanted, okay? Who knows? Maybe if they don't make it, at least the fans will keep it alive. Actually, there's also one more thing. Come on, Capcom, please actually make this a game. I would love to actually get this game.